Welcome to Study Kendra. Today we will talk about Class 12 Political Science, Chapter 9. Globalization. Let's know what is globalization. Globalization means the flow of ideas, capital, commodities, and people across various parts of the world. It is a multidimensional concept. It has political, economic, and cultural manifestations, and these must be adequately distinguished. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Concept of globalization. Globalization is a multidimensional concept. It has political, economic, and cultural manifestations, and these must be adequately distinguished. As a concept, globalization fundamentally deals with flows. These flows can be ideas moving from one part of the world to another, commodities being traded across borders, and so on. Globalization need not always be positive. It can have negative consequences for people. The crucial element is the worldwide interconnectedness which is created and sustained as a consequence of these constant flows. Causes of globalization. One important aspect of globalization is that even though any single factor does not cause it, technology remains a critical element. While globalization is not caused by any single factor, technology remains a critical element. There is no doubt that the invention of the telegraph, the telephone, and the microchip in more recent times has revolutionized communication between different parts of the world. The ability of ideas, capital, commodities, and people to move more easily from one part of the world to another has been made possible by technological advances. Interconnections are also an important aspect of globalization. Any event taking place in one part of the world could impact another. Consequences of globalization. There are three consequences of globalization. Political consequences. Economic consequences. Cultural consequences. Political consequences. Globalization results in an erosion of state capacity by reducing the ability of governments to do what they want to do. It gives way to a more minimalist state that performs certain core functions such as the maintenance of law and order, and the security of its citizens. The primacy of the state continues to be the unchallenged basis of the political community. In place of the state, the market becomes the prime determinant of economic and social priorities. Globalization does not always reduce state capacity. State capacity has received a boost as a consequence of globalization, with enhanced technologies available at the disposal of the state to collect information about its citizens. Economic consequences. While not everything may be known about the economic facets of globalization, this particular dimension shapes a large part of the content and direction of contemporary debates surrounding globalization. To understand the economic consequences of globalization, it is important to know that economic globalization involves many actors other than the IMF, International Monetary Fund, and WTO. It involves greater economic flows among different countries of the world. Some of this is voluntary and some are forced by international institutions and powerful countries. Globalization has involved greater trade in commodities across the globe as it has reduced the imposing of restrictions on the imports of one country to another. Economic globalization has created an intense division of opinion all over the world. According to some, economic globalization is likely to benefit only a small section of the population. On the other hand, advocates of economic globalization argue that it generates greater economic growth and well-being for larger sections of the population. Cultural consequences. The consequences of globalization can also be seen in our culture, and thus it is not confirmed only in the sphere of politics and economy. The process of cultural globalization poses a threat because it leads to the rise of a uniform culture, or what is called cultural homogenization. Cultural globalization has both positive as well as negative effects on the world. While cultural homogenization is an aspect of globalization, the same process also generates precisely the opposite effect. India and globalization. Flows pertaining to the movement of capital, commodities, ideas, and people go back several centuries in Indian history. During British rule, India became an exporter of primary goods and raw materials and a consumer of finished goods. After independence, India decided to be a self-sufficient country rather than being dependent on others. In 1991, India embarked on a program of economic reforms that sought increasingly to regulate various sectors including trade and foreign investment. Resistance to globalization. Culturally, they are worried that traditional culture will be harmed, and people will lose their age-old values and ways. Globalization has invited strong criticism all over the globe. For some, globalization represents a particular phase of global capitalism that makes the rich richer and the poor poorer. It is important to note here that anti-globalization movements also participate in global networks, allying with those who feel like them in other countries. The World Social Forum, WSF, is a global platform bringing together human rights activists, environmentalists, labor, youth, and women activists opposed to neoliberal globalization. India and resistance to globalization. Critics of globalization from the political right express anxiety over the political, economic, and cultural effects. In political terms, they also fear the weakening of the state. Resistance to globalization in India has come from different quarters. There have been left-wing protests and economic liberalization voiced through political parties as well as through some forums. Resistance to globalization has also come from the political right. This has taken the form of objecting particularly to various cultural influences. Conclusion. Globalization is the process of rapid integration of countries. This is happening through greater foreign trade and foreign investment. Technology, particularly IT, has played an important role in organizing production across countries. Thanks for watching. If you find this video helpful and informative, please share and hit the subscribe button.